Welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for episode 22 of our new figure showcase, where I'll be doing a quick review / posing session with the newest edition of my collection. And today we're jumping back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we'll be taking a look at the Black Widow figure in her black suit by Hot Toys from the Black Widow standalone movie. And this is the exclusive version with the added accessory. So let's start by talking a little about the movie first and the state of the MCU as a whole, because I think that will also impact your interest in this figure. Phase 4 overall has been a mixed bag, I can admit that. Now personally, I'm still fully on board with the Marvel movies and shows. Call me a Marvel fanboy if you must, but I found everything to be enjoyable, although I'm not blind to some of the deficiencies. Some of the productions have been amazing, like Shang-Chi, Wakanda Forever, No Way Home, and some have been a little entertaining, but lacking as well. I'm looking at Thor Love and Thunder in particular. And I'm not even touching the Disney Plus shows. I'll discuss that with my next figure review, which should be the White Vision from WandaVision. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because Black Widow was an interesting one. And if you look at social media reactions, which I know can be a vicious black hole, but on social media, the overall reception to the movie wasn't that great. A lot of people had issues with the Taskmaster reveal, which I totally understand. Although for me, it wasn't a negative just because I didn't have any connection to the character beyond the MCU version. And then people criticized the story and the effects, and this is one where I just don't get it. As far as Phase 4 overall for me, Black Widow ranks pretty high up there in terms of overall MCU movies. And the phase. I thought it was a really interesting setup for the story, taking a page from an FX show called The Americans. If you haven't watched that show, I would highly recommend it. It's great. And it delved into Natasha's backstory a little bit more. So I liked what they did. I thought it had great action. It was an awesome introduction to some characters that we're going to be seeing more of in the MCU. And obviously Yelena was a standout. So I really liked Black Widow. And I do already have the Hot Toys Taskmaster, which was a solid release. And besides the version of Black Widow, this version of Black Widow, I have her white suit version on order, and I have Yelena on order. Only complaint I have is that Hot Toys teased but didn't produce a Red Guardian. There is a third-party version of him, but I thought he looked really bad, so I passed on that one. Hopefully I don't end up regretting that decision. So, I was basically really looking forward to this release, and as is our norm, let's start by looking at the overall package with everything she comes with. And it's a pretty straightforward Black Widow release. She comes with 3 handguns, a set of baton handles that connect to her backpack with pegs that also allow for some movement, a set of straight batons, and a pair of articulated batons with interchangeable heads. And she also includes a slew of interchangeable hands, and as this is the exclusive version, she does include the Taskmaster shield. And finally, wrapping up the package, she comes with the standard Hot Toys hexagonal base with her name on the front and the movie logo on the surface. So overall, a decent package. So let's take a closer look at the accessories, and we'll start off with the guns. Here we have 3 in total, with 2 that go into her thigh holsters and 1 that's a little different, including a red dot sight and a laser attachment in the front of the gun. Like usual, these all have moving parts, and you can pull back on the slide with the smaller guns, and they're spring loaded, so they lock back into place. All 3 do have removable clips as well, and they look good. And I do like the equipped gun with the sight and laser the best. But I do have to ding Hot Toys a little bit here, and it's just because of my experience recently with Damn Toys and Easy and Simple. These are good, solid pieces, but they don't compare to what has been produced by other companies out there. These do feel a little plasticky, to be honest, but that's me being nitpicky, just because I've seen what can be done with 6-scale weapons at a fraction of the price that Hot Toys is asking for. So I think I'm going to hold Hot Toys to that higher standard. Next up, the batons, and we'll start with the straight versions. These do have really great detailing and paintwork to them. The handles are nicely done with a silver, almost chrome-like paint app on either end of the grip, with the grip itself looking like a textured black rubber. So really nicely done here. Baton itself is made up of almost link-like elements, which makes sense given that they do become articulated and longer. But again, really fine detailing and nice paint applications, particularly in the smaller links, all culminating in a taser-like tip. Now the alternate versions seen here are the articulated batons, and here it looks like the pieces have become longer to activate that function, and you get some nice articulated joints here to really give you a range of display options and show the weapon swinging in different poses. Base wise, these do come with hooked blades that are again nicely detailed, with the blade having a nice metal paint finish that does make it feel metallic even though it is a plastic element. Also included are an additional 2 end pieces for the baton that can just be swapped into the top link, so plenty of display options here. Now next, let's talk about the exclusive accessory, which is Taskmaster's shield. Now at first, when this went up for pre-order, I don't think I really cared about the exclusive. To me, it looked like it was identical to the one coming with Taskmaster, so it seemed silly, but it was the same cost as the standard version, so I figured why not. Point being, I'm glad I got it because this is almost a battle damage version of that shield, at least from a paint app point of view. It's really evident on the orange paint where you can clearly see some weathering effects, as well as having that continue around the shield edges. Also, like Taskmaster, this does affix to the figure via magnets, and Black Widow does include those magnets, so it's a nice touch. Finally, as mentioned previously, she includes a ton of hands for holding her gun, holding the batons as well. I'm guessing some are also for her superhero pose as well as base fist, so I do appreciate that Hot Toys always gives you plenty of options. But I will say the pegs on mine are really tight, so sometimes it's a chore to swap out the hands. But looking at the parts themselves, it's great work with nice detailing for gloves, great paint apps as well, including the skin tones on the fingers, and I think this is a first for Black Widow. There's actually some silverish color on her nails for nail polish, and it does add a little something different to a pretty standard accessory. So now let's look at the sculpt, which is what really tends to set these figures apart. And I'll confess, I do own almost every Black Widow out there except for the original from Iron Man 2 and the one from Age of Ultron. And I think looking at all of them, this is a really great sculpt here. I should actually open my Endgame Widow, as I still haven't opened her up, and I think everyone universally loved that figure. But for this version, I think Hot Toys did another great job, as they should at this point, having given us so many versions of her. But let's start with what really stands out, and it's three things in particular. First, the work on the eyes is always amazing, and I feel like that's what really makes these figures look lifelike, and they killed it with Black Widow. Next, the detailing. There's a lot of great detail work on the sculpt, and it's really noticeable around her ears, where Hot Toys did a great job recreating all of her earrings. And that detail work extends to my favorite part of the figure, which is the hair. There's so much going on here, and if you look at the sculpt from behind, you really do see all the work that went into detailing her hair, including some black hair ties at the end of the braids. I mean, it's just pretty amazing, the level of work they do. I know there are many of you who love rooted hair, but I just have a hard time imagining this level of detail with rooted hair, and also the cost involved with that. I'm sure it's possible, but I think it would be too much of a hassle. So I love the sculpted version. Only negative I will say with the sculpted long hair is that moving the head is limited, as the hair does create some conflicts with the body, but I didn't have many issues during posing. As for the rest of the figure, she has the updated black jumpsuit from the movie, and it looks incredible. And I do like that it's got a collar detail. Seems like a funny thing to fixate on, but as I mentioned before, I do tend to collect multiple versions of the same character, so it really is nice when you can pick up all the differences in the suit. I will also say, with the gold belt buckle and the gold wrist gauntlets, this does feel like an attempt to really give us a more comic accurate version of her suit. And the suit itself is great. It is much more flexible for her upper body and not as restrictive as other versions, and there's a ton of great detail work here, different panels and textures and material use. I know some comic fans like the more simple looks and tend to think that Marvel overcomplicates the suits with buckles, belts, and so on, but here I do think it makes for a much more visually interesting figure. And they did add some plastic red elements to her shoulder guards, almost like light up elements, and to her backpack that I think give the figure a nice subtle bit of color while still maintaining that tactical looking uniform. I will also say that I do like the belts here for the holster in her backpack. Hot Toys went with a rubbery plastic that looks good, but is going to avoid the pitfalls associated with pleather. So I'm really happy with that, because I don't think it hurts the look of the figure either. There have been so many versions of Black Widow released so far, so I know sometimes it can be hard to get excited for another version. And I'll say that I was excited for this figure, but not as excited as for, say, an original one. This figure, having said that, this figure is really impressive, and I think it shows a continued improvement from Hot Toys. Negatives here are relatively minor, but there's a ton to like, and I think the biggest thing for me was that this was a fun figure to pose. Those double jointed elbows are key, and while the poses may not seem terribly exciting to everyone, I like the ability to have her just posed aiming a gun, holding the batons, pulling the guns from her holsters, reloading. There's a lot you can do with the figure, and it's not difficult to get her to look dynamic, and I think that has a lot to do with the overall quality here and the options we have. I mean, as a figure, she looks great with all the accessories, and even the Taskmaster shield, which I wasn't completely sold on as an accessory, works really well with her. This is honestly a figure that I feel like I may repose often because of those options. One word of warning to reiterate here: again, the pegs on her hands are really tight, so just take your time when swapping out those hands, just to make sure not to damage the figure or the pegs, although they do give you an extra pair just in case. Beyond that, I know there was some criticism about the sculpt, but to me this is Black Widow right here, and I think this is a home run figure for Hot Toys. I think this is a figure that also does elevate others in the collection, which is huge. Here I think she definitely helps bring the Taskmaster to life just a little bit more. That wasn't a bad figure, but I didn't think it was the best, particularly in terms of posability, but standing next to Widow, she does look great as well. There are 2 more figures in the line, as I've mentioned, with the Black Widow in the white suit having already been released overseas, so hopefully Sideshow does start shipping her soon, and the Yelena figure also in her white suit. And like I said before, I have both on order, so I'm looking forward to getting those. Only regret, again, is that Hot Toys didn't move forward with their Red Guardian figure. I think they did a really great prototype him, but for some reason they decided not to move forward. I think he would have been a great figure to wrap up the line. Now, he is going to show up in the Thunderbolts movie, so I'm sure we're going to get a figure of him eventually. But I think from the promo or tease with the movie's announcement, it looks like it's a different suit. So just wish they had done the original one. And the last figure I wish we would have gotten would have been Melina. Just think it would have been great to get that figure that would have wrapped up the family unit from the movie. But I'll take what I can get, and this is a great, awesome figure. So that was a quick look at the Hot Toys Black Widow from her standalone movie. I'm really impressed, and I think this figure has skyrocketed to the front of the list of figures I've gotten this year. Easily will make the top 5 unless some of the other ones still coming my way manage to dethrone her. But I really do like what we got here, so I'm curious to know what you think, and maybe if you really like the figure, or if you're experiencing superhero / Black Widow fatigue. But let me know your thoughts, and as always, thank you for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll touch base on the next video.